Hey, welcome back to Life on the Wrist. Hope you're doing well. So today we're going to be continuing our series of the watches we saw in the Delta Lounge. This episode will be for May of 2019. If you haven't seen any of the previous episodes of this series, I travel a lot, so what I end up doing is I end up looking at people's wrists when I'm in the Delta Lounges waiting for my flights, and I end up seeing some pretty cool watches. Last month's wasn't that great when it came to the variety. Perhaps I wasn't being as perceptive last month, but I only saw, two interesting Omegas. I'll put a link in the description to that episode. But this month, there was actually some really nice variety, and I actually enjoyed seeing the watches on people's wrists. Perhaps because I had such a bad last month, I was a little bit more perceptive in May. So we saw three very, very interesting watches, and I think you'll enjoy hearing about the stories behind them as well. So the first watch that we saw was a vintage Datejust. It was a very, very simple watch. It was a reference 1601. It was it had a stainless steel case with a stainless steel bezel. Again, very, very simple watch to wear. It had a light brown Hodinkee strap on it, which was really cool. The gentleman who was wearing it, we kind of got into talking and discussed, Hodinkee and Datejust and Rolex and all kinds of stuff. He said that this Rolex Datejust he acquired himself, kind of when Datejusts were still kind of on the rise in prices, and it's his travel watch. He thinks it's an extremely versatile watch, which I have to agree with him. It's perfect for if you're going into the office or seeing a client, but it's also good when you want to go out. It does the job. Also, it's just kind of under the radar, especially if it's a stainless steel case and bezel. So extremely versatile, great for traveling, and you can't really go wrong with a simple Datejust. It's a great vintage watch, and I think everyone should experience a vintage Datejust sometime in their life. So that was the first watch. The second watch was my favorite for the month, one of the two for my favorite of the month. This was a Panerai, but it was on the wrist of a woman, which I thought was really, really great, because as I said in some previous episodes, this is quite a male-dominated hobby, but it's nice to see that women are also into it and kind of exploring watches just like men are. This version was the Panarei PAM574. It was the one with the green strap. After speaking with a woman about it, it was a gift from her husband. It was a recent acquisition for her. It was a gift from her husband on Christmas Day last year, so 2018 Christmas. I'm not a huge fan of the really bright green strap. I think it's a little bit too much for me. It also isn't the type of green that I would want to wear. I'd probably want to wear a little bit of a darker green if I had a strap, if I was wearing it with a strap. But I asked her about what she thought about the strap, and she absolutely loved it, and that's all that matters. I think the most important thing about when you're buying a watch or wearing something on your wrist is that you enjoy it. Other people don't have to enjoy it. As long as you like it, then go ahead and wear it, because that's all that matters. Very interesting conversation with her as well. Her husband's a watch guy. She's slowly getting into the hobby because he's making it a big part of, he's made it a big part of his life, so she kind of is following in suit. He also is a huge Panerai lover. He's got some vintage Panerais that she was telling me about. She didn't know all of the references or the historical, context of the watches, but it was still very interesting to hear about. And now I guess they're, his and her Panerai lovers. So that's really, really cool. The third watch and the final watch, it was really, really sad because I was actually on my way out of the lounge, and I was walking and I kind of spotted this, I was looking at people's wrists and I saw something that, you don't really see very often. And this was actually a Thunderbird dial on a vintage Datejust. Unfortunately, I don't know the reference because I didn't stop and talk to the person because I was on my way to my flight. But I think this was probably one of the coolest watches that I saw in the Delta Lounge this past month. The Panerai was cool, but I think the Thunderbird dial really stood out to me and was one of the reasons why it's made the list. I absolutely love this watch. You don't really see Thunderbird dials very often, and I think that's why I like it a lot, because I like things that are a little bit, off the beaten path, quite unique, and makes your collection a lot different than someone else who also collects watches. I think that's what ends up happening when you are a collector. You want things that other people don't have, or want things that you don't see every single day. And this Thunderbird bezel Datejust is exactly what that is. Unfortunately, I couldn't stop and talk to the individual about it, but he was a little bit of an older gentleman, so I can imagine perhaps it was a family heirloom, or you can think of an abundance of stories that could be attached to this watch. But it was a really cool watch, and yeah, for sure one of the best watches I've seen so far in this series, in my opinion. So just to recap, so the 3 watches that I saw was the vintage Datejust 1601. There was a Panarei PAM574 and a vintage Datejust with a Thunderbird bezel. This was a really fun month, especially because there was some variety as opposed to being kind of the same mundane watches. There was obviously, you know, Apple Watches, Fitbits that are kind of taking over, but that's totally understandable. And I don't really think of them as I don't really think of smartwatches as a watch. I just think of it as a technology that you wear on your wrist. So it will happen, but these were 3 really interesting watches that I saw and made my experience in the Delta Lounge this past month all the more better, being that I saw them. So if you've made it this far and you enjoyed this video, I would love if you guys could slap a like on it. It really would help us out. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about these watches. Which one out of the 3 of these would you like to have in your collection? I'm sure it's going to be the Thunderbird, but we'll see. And if you are new to the channel, would love for you to subscribe to us. We create videos about watches, just about anything about them. So if you enjoy that kind of content, check us out. And on that note, I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day.